cannot be expected. The law of regulator, it wasn't signed by the president because there is a provision that stops it for now. So a lot has been said about positive and negative sides of this law and how it will be adopted and what will be after. And we need expert opinion of different organizations and stakeholders in order to understand the roadmap of control of changes this law brings. We got accustomed that the changes in this country can happen only if they are controlled by society, especially in such a sphere as a regulator. This can be done by experts. Who can start? Roman, we'll start with you. So the presentation. So be brief. And then this discussion will continue, and we will use it as points to discuss these issues further. Thank you, Roman. Firstly, I would like to remind about controversial things that raised a lot of political discussions with the Supreme Council and draw your attention to the amendments that were made, that the Contest Commission that will be formed by the President, the Supreme Council, and the Cabinet of Ministers, 5-5-1 formula, 2-2-1 formula, and in July, all these members of the commission, this commission was formed by the Supreme Council, and then, was the amendment on the experience of working in the field to be a candidate. 5 from 3 reduction, but this amendment was stopped, so the minimum number of years is 5 now. And also controversial issue of rotation. You know that there are many proposals. Rotation of all the members of the Commission during 6 months, and in the result the formula is 6, 11 and 18 months. So 3 members of the Commission are changed, and then 2 are changed, and the second round is 2 are changed. So what we expect from the regulator when the law comes into action? Firstly, there will be more transparency. So the issues concerning tariff methodology, documentation will be published. And this will include calculations and also reaction of regulator on the addresses and the proposals that come in the course of communication. Also, the law envisages what is the local government and communities, the issues that can be reviewed locally. So we have many communities, we have a lot of communal enterprises that are regulated, but we should maybe discuss the main issues. Maybe some pilot hearings will be held at the local level. And also the regulator will not only control the participants of the market, but also monitor the indicators. And we can get a layer of new information about the market and competition in the market. And we would like to see that the information is disclosed at on some regular basis. Also, we expect that the regulator will review the complaints from consumers directly and will take decisions. So this will be the function of ombudsman. Without ombudsman, we are now, but we live and see how regulator will perform this function. So we will follow for the next half year. First, half year after the law is introduced. Firstly, the formation of a contest commission and how open contests is carried out. Second, that some influence on regulator, maybe some recommendations, informal attempts to dictate some decisions. Of course, it will depend on the rules of ethics established by regulator. In law, there are main principles of these rules concerning that they cannot meet with the participants of the market one by one, and also this should be one of the first documents of the regulator in order that its work be approved by the public and that its work adheres to reforms. And also as to finances, the law envisages that before the 1st of December, the regulator should make public the register of entities that further will pay these contributions for regulation, and the budget will be formed in this way, the budget of the Commission. So what are the drawbacks? First, the members of the regulator that will stop the functions, will these norms be attributed to them? So among the requirements is that they cannot work for 2 years to do business with enterprises that they regulated. Second, how the new head will be elected. The law says that he should be nominated each 2 years after the commission is formed. So is it about first rotation or full rotation? So also how to provide the norms and the salaries that are provided in the legislation. So maybe in the budget there should be information about this budget for this, and also the law requires to coordinate personal information and the regulation of confidential information, and what information is considered confidential. So maybe there will be some appeals because some information is confidential and cannot be disclosed. So there are many hidden traps, and we should pay more attention to these controversial issues. This is all. Thank you. Before giving the floor, 2 short questions. You've mentioned the information that should be more open, and what do you expect? How to avoid the scandals in this sphere? As we remember the case with Anti-Corruption Commission, we questioned their transparency. So there is a political risk that some entity won't provide their candidates to this contest commission, or these people will disrupt quorum. And it can happen, and the only way is that this meeting should be public, and there should be reports when this commission gathers, when what decisions are taken, and the maximum transparency of this temporary body is important. As to those blocks of information now we have open methodology of calculation of some tariffs, but we do not have examples of calculations, for example, for separate months, for example, and how the sum is formed. So that should be stated clearly. So OPORA representative is given the floor. I would like to draw your attention to some aspects mentioned by Roman. First, access to information. Second, open discussions. And third, decisions. And as to information, it's difficult to say what information can be considered confidential, but what we have today, the consumer is interested in components of the tariffs. So for the consumers on the site, there is aggregated information. There is no detailed information, for example, about the components of some tariffs, for example, for the supply of heat, for example, for Lviv Energo, you can find information there. The decisions of the Commission, the decision that is on establishing the prices on energy supply. So you will look for a long time for this information, and only after this you will find it. Also, you can find investment program there, and in other unit there are reports on the completion of investment projects, and also reports on different types of activities, and you can get information by sending a request, and you can find reports of the enterprises. So as of today, the person cannot see where the money goes to, those money that are included in the tariff. National Commission accepted forms of reporting, but no indicator can be considered confidential. Everything that is included in the tariff, this information should be made public and should be publicized on the site, because now it's really difficult to get it from the enterprises of National Commission. And also about the decisions and what is lacking today. When the regulatory act is adopted, we should provide other options how to solve things differently. The classic example, the mounting of gas meters. Before this, oblgaz organizations established these gas meters, and the Commission took a decision that in 2 years, as is stated in the law on commercial metering of gas, there can be established only meters per house, and there are massive opposition from people to establish such meters for the whole house, for the whole building, and there are no other options provided by the Commission. So there should be alternative. For example, we increase the tariff. Option B, part of funds is provided by people for these meters, and another part is from the oblgaz organization. So other options were not proposed, and these decisions, they should be made public, they should be openly discussed. And the third issue, during these open discussions, we should analyze these options. So there should be active participation of people who will monitor the work of monopoly enterprises, and work at the central level and active participation and open discussions and the analysis in order to solve problems. So there are high requirements and law to the members of National Commission, but it is evident that we cannot expect that this body will take decisions that will be in the interest of the public. Our main task is to build and to trust, because now the trust is lost. Going back to confidential information and how things are made public, the story about Rotterdam Plus, OPORA NGO made a request on provision of information to provide calculations that were used in calculating the price. But we got aggregated information, not detailed information, to see the indexes and the delivery and transporting. And without these indicators, we cannot calculate all the data, all the formula by ourselves. So we should avoid such manipulations or avoid the provision of partial information. So the activity of the Commission should be transparent. Will this law help, or this will remain the same concerning data? It's good that there is such a law, but the question is what information is really confidential. So National Commission establishes what issue is confidential. So this should be monitored. Andriy Gerus, former member of the Commission and independent expert.
Thank you for invitation. My first issue which I will address is the topic was titled, "They calculate, we control. Who are they and who are we?" Independent experts may use the data of the regulator, of the National Commission. They can provide their own opinions. Well, now I understand. Maybe this is impossible, and we try to understand whether the third sector, NGOs, can control, can watchdog the Commission. Who are we? All NGOs, all civil society, this is collective lack of responsibility. Tanya has been trying to get the information from the National Commission, from the national regulation for several months. This watchdog element will be introduced into practice. So I would like you to give us the definition. Who are we? Who will control? Who will watchdog? As concerns this draft law, we should understand the problem which we address, should define the problems which the regulator experienced before this law. Everyone told about independence. We would like to give him independence. Independence from whom? On whom it depended? Well, the president. It depended on president. As we resolved the problem, two members are appointed by president, one person by cabinet of ministers, two persons by quota. So what kind of independence increased, I don't know. Now everyone who can learn the law and the constitution The next, transparency. We told about it. All of you saw how the law was voted for. When the round table is conducted, and after 30 minutes after this round table discussion, some amendments are made to the law in 30 minutes after the round table discussion. It was not transparent. This is for the first time when in the section other the amendments to the law were voted for. The other question, how to do it correctly, to reform some body first and then provide it additional powers, or first to provide additional powers and then start reforms. In this case, this is the second situation now. The national regulator should not go to the Ministry of Justice for initialing its acts, but they always been partners, the Ministry of Justice, if something is not correct in the act. When some decisions caused resonance, then the Ministry of Justice could put some barriers. Now this is only the court which can cancel decisions of the national regulator. For example, any student can see that the methodology Rotterdam Plus has been introduced with violations. So in any normal court, any student will win against this decision. The same concern setting tariffs for consumers. If court will reject, if court will cancel the tariffs, how to mend the situation, I don't know. So in the situation where we have many questions to the culture of regulator, this is very controversial. The next is approval of license conditions. The law changed it. First, they were changed 1 year ago, and now they have been amended again. Next, our theoretical opinions, let's consider them in terms of practice. I heard if any informal pressure will happen, someone will control. I was a member of National Commission. If I experience pressure, how will you got to know about that, and how can you help me? You can't help me if someone presses on me. As an independent body, the national regulator describes the grounds on their own discretion. The regulator do its actions voluntarily. These days, the meetings of national regulator are open, and web camera has been installed. They are broadcast online. What will change with the adoption of this law? I don't understand. Returning to the very beginning, how to formulate the problem correctly. Regulator is a quasi-judicial body which can pass justified decisions, judgments. Rotterdam Plus is deemed by someone the correct decision, someone thinks it is wrong decision. When you have judgments, nobody can be put into strict borders. When a judge comes in any court, he or she issues judgments voluntarily at his or her own discretion. The next question concerns collegiality. The decisions are passed by the majority of votes. No separate decisions are issued. If there are enough votes, decisions are adopted. So this means collective responsibility. In such conditions, no personal responsibility is felt by the members of this commission. So this is yet another thing talking for that whatever the regulation is adopted by the regulation. This concerns both the parliament and other central bodies. No members of parliament bear responsibility for the laws they adopt. When the rotation was discussed, this issue is important, and it was discussed in the during the sitting, because when we pass from theory to practice, so the main thing was discussed in the other section when these amendments 32 and 86 were introduced to this law. So we'll see how the situation will develop. We will watch over the developments, and as concerns the agenda, this law, we can't say that this law will not be discussed any longer. No amendments will be introduced to this law. The commission shall be formed as the law goes, and this membership of the commission will work till 2024. You told that there is no collegial body which can control the national regulator. Activists and journalists have not enough mechanism, just some blogs where journalists brought the discussion on top of the agenda in mass media. Well, as for me, I will not be writing blog articles about Rotterdam Plus methodology. The case on transformers, this is coincidence of many factors such as Yatsenyuk factor, Vaca factor, and there will be not many cases like this. How it works in Europe, for example in Germany, in Hallstatt town. One person monitored regulations which the regulator adopts. The law should ensure that the regulator issue correct decisions. This means that the law is not correct if the regulations which are adopted are not correct. So then we do not need such law, because the law is the basis of everything. Of course, we can focus the discussion on Rotterdam Plus procedure, on something else. the tariffs can be increased from October 1st by 10%, but the result will be the decision of the National Commission, and I don't see any mechanisms of influence on the Commission. Now we are giving the floor to NAK Naftogaz of Ukraine representative, because NAK Naftogaz is now under reform. We invited its representative. We call on public control. We call on general public to control the process of reform NAK Naftogaz Ukraine. Thank you for invitation to this event. It is very interesting for me to listen to this discussion. The discussion is very interesting. I'm a lawyer by education, and in Naftogaz of Ukraine I address the implementation of European legislation, which has been incorrectly introduced into the law on gas industry of Ukraine. The method how the law was adopted by Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine was not correct. All people who took part in the voting, those people should understand that it was a big mistake. The second thing, the law regulates legal relations. It does not regulate everything. It does not provide to the National Commission an unlimited power, because markets, national markets of services in this sphere where social interests should be protected, such as individual customers, security of deliveries, the state will have no reason to interfere with entities' activities and individuals' activities. So spheres of energy sector and energy services, the list of utility services is provided there. So I offer the lawyers to focus their attention on this sphere. This is the market of supply and a little bit storage of gas and non-competitive segments, transportation, distribution of natural gas and electricity via networks. So these two segments where various methods of regulation are applied. Tariffs do not cover everything. Instruments of regulations, and they are also fixed in the law. So pricing policy and state control are fixed in the law. There are methods which National Commission can use on the basis of Constitution to Article 219. The Commission can use these tools only according to the laws of Ukraine. So there is a Constitutional Court's decision saying that Article 219 is a correct article. Only the law can form powers. Of what first next steps of the Commission should be. This is the methodology of distribution of natural gas, and this is a block of issues which all people interested in gas topics they should have this topic in focus. So our management already articulated our comments, our criticism about this methodology. It does not always meet the needs of consumers, and it does not meet the principle of justice, without embracing the principle of justice in the Commission's activities, no improvement could be achieved. So the methodology of distribution on the one hand will set methods of setting tariffs. All residential consumers, they use distribution networks, not the main lines, not the mains. So the points where main networks which are not controlled by the state gas distributors will receive proceeds. The operator of transport network, which is state-owned, he will receive proceeds. I don't think it is grounded approach. I think this provides opportunities for manipulations. So for the third time, I want to focus attention on the methodology of distribution. I think it is now pending in the Ministry of Justice. I think it is already posted on the National Commission's site. The methodology consists of figures, and I don't think that someone will verify, will check this methodology. The second is methodology of setting rates for regulation. Rates for regulations, they were defined very fast, and the mechanism is not correct. Let's look how it will be adopted. This would be one of the first tests for the national regulator, how they will interpret the regulations which are not which have more than one meaning. Any ambiguous should be interpreted to the benefit of citizens, but not the national regulator. So it would be the test for the national regulator. And also the procedure of considering complaints and disputes. The procedure of claims and disputes is covered by the law on natural gas market adopted last April, which took effect in October last year, but the procedure has not yet been adopted. I don't know why. What are the expectations? The expectations of market in market terms and my individual expectations. I suppose that national regulator will demonopolize retail natural gas market, how each consumer of Ukraine receives gas. This is not tariff. This is how you can choose a supplier. The first aspect is excess of suppliers to the market. Why? There are problems of accessibility of the market. This is rather specific question, not amorphous. The second is access of consumers to the market. We saw, many of you saw, the platforms to choose suppliers in Belgium or other countries. You can use your mouse, and by one click you can change your gas supplier. In my opinion, if we learned how to use Prozora system, the same way we can use a system of selection of gas suppliers. national gas market, national gas storage market methodology, in our opinion, does not is not in the interest of the state, because there are underground storages, they are big and they cannot be digitalized, so that their cost is placed on consumers of the services. We need some long-term methodology. On the other hand, new products are required in Europe. They are swaps or other tools for consumers of network to be interested in buying such services. We didn't see this in current methodology, and regulator can set tariffs only on the basis of methodology. And if the methodology does not suppose forming new products, these new products are fictitious, and you know that opening the market for foreign entities is very important. And the third thing, concerning legal activities, legal aspect of activities, I hope that the new commission, after adoption of the law, will operate within the legislative framework. This means that every decision should be grounded by certain provisions, on the basis of which law provisions the decision of the national regulation is issued. Any regulation should be based on the laws, on its specific provisions. The same concerns gas transportation system regulations and laws. Operators of networks, they initiate changes, they have policies of developing their businesses, and regulator then approves them. And in the new law, the regulator is a subject which can initiate such changes. These powers should be delegated, because more market-based approach is just to approve initiatives that are initiated by such operators and access to commercial information. Business information of entities, this is the confidentiality mode, business information, business secrets, they are fixed by the laws of Ukraine. There is Article 19 of the Economic Code of Ukraine. Any information which is not envisaged by the law as such that should be provided to state bodies, it cannot be requested by the regulator. And to finalize, experts and economic entities, I want them to stop in this vicious circle of blaming each other. This would be better if they just think over what they want to achieve and how to do this. We can see that for some time transparency was ensured by the regulator even without this law. So first you should understand what you want and then implement it into reality.
Dmytro Naumenko. So, senior analyst of Stronger Together. firstly, I would like to remind you the history of creation of such law. And this law, I took part. So the Secretariat of Energy Committee took part in it, and representatives of financial organizations also took part, and civil society also participated. So our partners are tired of all this situation that was before voting, and people believe that there should be political compromises as to forming of the contest commission, and because we needed this law. And going back to comments of my colleagues, I personally believe that this law is better than the situation that exists now, when the president, by his will, can change the composition of the regulator in one day, and if they don't like it, he can do it once again. So the status of the people, and they didn't have the status, and now they are provided with a platform. That identifies the mechanism, and before this there was no such mechanism. It was formed by one person. And one more important thing about this law is that it envisages the new mechanisms and new procedures. A lot has been said about it. That established standard for the work of regulator, and for example, so if we have some changes in the commission, new head of regulator, he can refuse to publish the decisions because this is not envisaged by the legislation. So about the mechanisms of formation of the commission, there is an important norm in the law that this nomination commission can comprise the representatives of international financial organizations and other important organizations, and their voice will be important and will influence the process of selection. And plus, we should pay attention to the requirements to the members of Contest Commission and the National Commission on Energy. So these are rigid requirements. So there should be people who meet these requirements. And that is important. This is an instrument due to which experts and civil activists and investigative journalists, all those people who fight corruption, they can use this information, make it public, and can draw the attention of our international partners, whose voice is really strong now. As to rotation, I personally want that the law enter into force and the composition of Commission changes, and we have crystal clear, transparent, and professional people on the Commission. But there is real life, and this procedure that is envisaged by law exists on paper, and it should be introduced into life. And the story with the public council of you know that there was the ideal mechanism on paper that is blocked because of political games in reality. So one more thing I wanted to say is that we should, no matter what expectations are, we should implement the law as the instrument for daily control of the activity of the Commission, and this is the main positive moment that we expect, and then practice will show what will going on further. So there was also a specifying question, and I would like to give the floor to Reanimation Package of Reform representative. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, the main issue concerning the law that was adopted by the Supreme Council on Thursday, it raises the issue of rotation. And the Reanimation Package of Reform always insisted and recommended the proposal to take into account by the deputies the full rotation, the full reloading of the composition of the Commission in order to reinforce the trust to the decisions that are taken by the regulatory body. And I will be honest, that the amendment that was first adopted and then cancelled, it is not satisfying situation for us. Life is life, and it just happened. This is the decision of deputies, and we have gradual rotation, and in 18 months, the Commission will be fully renewed. So speaking about advantages, the main advantage of this law, I believe, is the change in the selection. If before the adoption of this law, that is not yet signed, but at the same time, before the adoption of the law, the president was the only person without any contest identified and selected by his decision who will head the Commission. And the law changes this completely, and the nomination commission is formed, and the representatives of international organizations can be included with good reputation, of course. And at the same time, the president chooses from two candidates based on open competition, one per each position of the ruling positions of the Commission. And one of the benefits is also the reinforcement of financial independence of the Commission. The law that was adopted, it creates better conditions compared with what exists today. And speaking about the role of the society, so if the president signs the law, we should think about the composition of contest commission, whom the society can recommend, because a lot depends on this. So the recommendation, honest, professional people can be recommended, and contest commission is elected not only by the president, but also there will be two people elected to this nomination commission, nominated by the profile commissions of the Supreme Council, and the Cabinet of Ministers will also nominate one person. Also, the budget of the Commission, if the law is signed, so the law envisages terms when this funding of the Commission, the information about it should be made public, then it should be submitted to the Supreme Council and then to the Ministry of Finance to be introduced into the budget. And the third question, also the contribution for regulations, it is developed by the regulator. That's why in case of signing of the law, we would like to get information about what the Commission should do in this area. So separately, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that the law on regulator is really expected, long awaited, and on Thursday, when they voted for it, it was the Energy Day, and the Supreme Council adopted 5 laws concerning efficient energy in energy sphere, and the law on electricity market was adopted in first reading, and there are many issues, and regulatory bodies should get included, and bylaws should be developed, and also stimulation tariffs issue is also raised in the expert community, and also renewable energy issues. There are many questions to it, imbalances in this area, and tariffs, subsidies, and also connection to the networks, and the Commission provided the information about the connection to the networks, and there are many issues that should be controlled by society, and each decision that is taken in the framework of reforming the markets, of energy market, it costs a lot to consumers, and some international practices are not always optimal for us, and the experts tell us about it, and also about the issue and the concept of connection to the networks, and my colleague Alexey Orshik will tell you about it. Maybe I give the floor to Alexey.
Thank you for coming. Office of Efficient Regulation addressed connection issue strongly. Thank you for giving me the floor. I will tell you in a few words the main thing is for changes. I have been working for 8 years in the membership of the regulator. It was formed following the shape and operation of US regulators. Indeed, civil society, the influences in place in the USA, and the opportunity to use legal instruments, dependence of political leaders on decisions which they adopt. This allows to appoint a chemistry teacher to a vacancy of a National Commission member. The secondary staff professionalism who form for consideration the case tariff can be considered for several months. This secondary staff provides services which allow the teacher of chemistry to take correct decisions, being a member of a national regulator. So conditions should be formed for decisions to be adopted, for the decisions to be so well grounded that it would be just impossible to take so bad decisions as adopted now. The second aspect, a new regulator has been adopted, and so this status, which is anti-constitutional, as we mentioned already, and its decisions can be controversial and could be appealed against in courts where a regulator and an entity, a multinational company having turnover of billion hryvnias. So independence should be improved. At the same time, state budget should be located for decisions which are issued by national regulator. Maybe this is not so bad. Maybe some decisions to adopt them and to implement them we will need budget. The other important thing is already been mentioned. We are in the process of deep reforms in the energy sector. New markets are formed where and new methodologies are adopted, drafted for natural gas. The natural gas market law, the electricity market law, which is not yet adopted, and the combination of new regulator, which is 100% trusted, creation of new legislation, and responsibility of new regulator for the legislation implementation. All this will give us success with reform in energy sector. So lack of trust in this body, and tomorrow we will have work groups to develop secondary legislation, and the natural gas market and the electricity market. These new laws, they provide general principles which should be detailed in bylaws. Who will draft these codes? Regulator will draft them. So if civil society would like to be members of working groups, this concerns the issue of connection to networks. Someone meets someone, then the information goes about some decisions that it was adopted, but you were not invited to the working group meeting. This is how interaction of regulator with the outside world take place. Someone I don't understand why some people are members of those working groups. So firstly, we should support on the other side whether our country is capable to issue correct or not correct decisions, how long this will last. So we are at some initial point again. Thank you everyone for your positions. I would like to remind you the importance. I now have on the screen the results, the findings of sociological survey about the National Rada's decision whether they are important for consumers or monopolies. 50% think that mass media, 25% think the representatives of international institutions, 13% that NGOs are expected to control decisions. I have comment to this statistical data. This is not normal situation when What for do we adopt laws? In order to demonstrate sociological survey findings that civil activists should lead the process in the energy sector. The danger is that we can discuss various ideas, but we will see the law in its implementation via decisions of the regulator, and I think there will be some questions to these decisions, and we will understand how much, what is the degree of the Commission reforms, how much it has been reformed. Then people will evaluate the reform and the effects of this reform. You can look at the reforms in the country during 2 years and a half. The lag is rather big to assess the reforms in the country nationwide. So the argument that there is no political compromise for larger reforms, so this is not the issue for experts whether there is political compromise or not. The experts should press so that good laws are adopted, then reforms will be possible. I didn't hear what will change between yesterday and tomorrow. I would like to answer the question, who will control? Yes, some things are fixed in the law. But there is difference between norms and the principles and their implementation. Our expectations on implementation of these rules, colleagues have already said that there are several mechanisms of public civil control, watchdog mechanisms. The first is publishing draft decisions of the Commission along with substantiations and calculations. There are mechanisms of parliamentary control and budget mechanism and mechanism of representing the annual reports of national regulator at the Verkhovna Rada. Maybe this would be political assessment by MPs of the Commission's results. But anyway, this is a kind of control mechanism. And consumers of services, they will pay for regulation, they will be interested in high quality of the services of the regulator. This is one of the most powerful tools of control by NAK Nafrogaz of Ukraine. Subjects of the market will entities operating on the market will be interested in independent decisions of the regulator. Several months ago, our colleagues conducted sociological survey saying that 80% of people do not believe in tariffs, seeing corrupt elements included in the tariffs. This is what we address, what we should address. People understand the today's situation this way. So national regulator should restore trust. The trust is easily lost, but it is difficult to rebuild it again. It would be a rather difficult task, but it is possible. I think the key phrase which Mr. Ozhel said today, this is to build conditions. Although high requirements are set for members of the Commission, we should create such conditions that the teacher of chemistry is capable to issue right to adopt right decision. In this process, institutes of civil society will take an active part. They will watchdog, they will come to discussions, to public discussions. So the institution is important, the requirements to its members is important, and civil society's role is important as well. Thank you. This is another round of discussion which is very interesting for me. I think all of us understand the definition of national regulator in their own way. We visited Austrian regulator, Belgium regulator. They understand that this is not the body to combat corruption. Law enforcement bodies are responsible for combating corruption. Everything concerning corruption, this is covered by criminal code, and this is responsibility of law enforcers. Regulator is the body creating conditions for market development so that consumers receive the best benefits from market operation and competitiveness, and to prevent competition from ruining people's life. So regulator will not be a new national anti-corruption body. This is a body which is responsible for its professional competence for the issues in their competence. They should be professionals. Who is promoters of natural gas market reform in the context of Acer? They are Eurogas, INSOC, professional institutions, professional associations of natural gas market entities. So Europe understand that this is an body for regulation. This is what regulator means, but not an anti-corruption body. The Commission should understand the nominating bodies should understand that they are responsible for their nominees to the members of the National Commission. They should be professionals which will be capable to look onto the market in the up-down way, not in the down-up manner. So conceptually, we should understand that regulator will issue correct and justified decisions for the country. There is a news from National Commission from the 1st of October. The tariff rates for business and utilities will be increased. As concerned the residents, individuals, legitimization of this process, the process continues the same way as it was in March when Rotterdam Plus procedure was adopted. All those decisions, they will influence our future, and we will feel this effect. I would like to remind you about two things. The regulator's functions include monitoring of all gas markets and the role of civil society. The law envisages public council establishment which will take part in policy making in the energy sector. So the role of civil society is to implement the benefits which are envisaged for them. Thank you to everyone to every speaker, to every panelist. We are invited to the national regulators meeting. And after the law is signed by the president, I think we will continue this discussion, and we have articulated the questions which we will discuss in our next meetings. Thank you.